Hey traders, Cousin Vinny coming to you September the 15th, 2013, Sunday, with a market read and a small watch list for the coming week. The chart here is the comp stocks, percent of stocks trading above the 50-period moving average, and you can see that we're climbing, and we're currently at 59% of those stocks in the comp are trading above their 50-period moving averages. You can see the comp is continuing to move higher. We had this dip here, basically a little cup, and forming a handle right now, and looking at the 10-period EMA rising up and price just above, coming down just above the 10-period and almost testing it on Friday. This is a chart of the CPCE put-call ratio, and we can see that prices for the S&P 500 are back above their rising 50-period DMA. The indicators, the PPO, is down at 2.677, so really no signal per se. We had an extreme signal here earlier, a couple of weeks ago, and we are currently in the same situation on CPCE, currently at 60%. So we're no longer in the sell zone. We're moving back up and starting to head towards a buy zone. Advanced decline and other breadth indicators are giving more of a yellow to green light in the coming weeks. If we continue to see positive breadth, we see that we had this MDD 90% down day, advanced decline volume, and we're looking for a follow-up with a burst above a 90% level or higher. We didn't get that. We got 75% here last week on Monday. Similar to what we see here, we'd like to see. Okay, we'd like to see a burst in advanced decline, up volume, going higher than the 90% level to give us a clear green light. We don't have that yet. Also note that we continue to stay inside of this rising wedge on the S&P 500, so I'll be watching with great interest this crossover that we put in, looks like on Thursday. We have nice volume here, so no reason to suspect that we won't continue to move higher with the news on Syria continuing to abate. I'd be looking for some sticks like this one right here, okay, which we don't see any indication of selling just yet, like we saw here back in May. The bullish percent, we can see that we had a little dip here down below 80. We're currently bouncing right around the 75 level. We are at 76.60, and prices continue to move higher. We continue to watch NYMO. We can see that we've climbed above the zero line a couple of weeks ago, and we had a little dip on Thursday, but we are turning back up as of Friday. We have a crossover here that we need to watch and see if we can continue this upward, this rising wedge pattern, and get up this upper trend line. Stochastic is overbought, but there's no reason to not expect that we could continue to embed up here and prices continue to meander higher. As we showed on the NASDAQ, the S&P 500 stocks that are trading above their 50-period, we're currently at 65% of those stocks are trading above their 50-period DMA. We had a nice buy opportunity down here at 32, and the end of August, beginning of September. So let's watch to make sure that this continues to move higher this week. Last Sunday we looked at the trend, the ARMS index. We were looking for a spike on this move lower, which we did get a couple of weeks ago. We grinded up against this trend line that went back to November, this low in June, and we were grinding up against that. We thought that this might turn into a bear flag, but we broke back above the this trend line and now we're back above both the 10 and the 30 period moving averages. If you use the 20 and the 50, we're back above those levels. So watch the trend as well, not really giving much of a signal here as prices are starting to move sideways and flagging a little bit. I think we could probably see this move higher and get back to these recent highs, or at least test them this week or next. The weekly, this overlaid the bullish percent as well, which we covered before, but the thing I wanted to point out here is that we are back above the 10 period EMA on the weekly S&P 500, so that's a good sign. These moving averages continue to move higher, and we're above these Kirby levels, obviously because we haven't seen these prices before. There's all-time highs here, and continuing to move to highs again and retest that level. And of course, much like the S&P 500, the New York Stock Exchange ARCA Institutional Index, the XII, we were looking for a box trade here. This failed. This short, we popped back above the 10 period and the 30 period, so that signal was negated. These are all the stocks in this index. There's 75 of them. I watched this index, watched the buying and selling of institutions as they push the market around with these big cap names in this list. Notice the histogram went way positive. We were looking at this one histogram on Friday, and we pushed back up. This indicator pushed back up very quickly. So we could be flattening out here. Keep an eye on that as well. This is a candle glance of the indices, including Europe, Hang Seng, and others. So quick, you can pause this later and take a look at this. For the most part, we're looking pretty good. Japan is back above their 50 and 20 moving averages. The industrials are where they are, and the Hang Seng is up here back at the 23,000 level. Note the Russell and the other indices. Let's take a look at the sectors. This is sectors, candle glance, S&P 500 spider sectors. We can see how we're doing here. Note XBI, the banking index is moving lower. XBI, the biotech index, is flagging out here. Builders, XHB, looking okay, flagging out above the 20 and 50. And your other sectors here, just keep an eye on these. The defensive sectors down here, XLP, XLU, XLV. Saw some action last week. XLP is cruising up higher, and watch XLV and cyclicals, the XLY. Small cap stocks, the Russell and IWM, continue upward in this channel. We can see RSI is spending a great deal of the time above 50 and lesser amount of time below the 50 RSI. Note the strength of the S&P 500 continues to move higher, and there's a possibility we could test this recent high that we put in August, end of May, here at 1063.52. So watch your RSI. If it continues to move higher, maybe trading some stocks in the Russell or IWM. Gold, we can see, continues to move lower. RSI is back below 50, spending most of the year down below 50 RSI. And we had a failure here at 137.55, 1375, and you can see gold to S&P is moving lower. Okay, so we could be forming inverted head and shoulders here, but we took out these lows here, and now we're watching the 123.55 level with this bearish cross of the 10 and the 30. This is a chart of the US dollar end of day. We can see this trend line and the possibility we could come down and test that again with stochastics oversold though it might be a little bit of a stretch. We might see a little bit of a bounce this week, being Syria's becoming a non-issue, or at least less of an issue than it was when we spiked here and we had a threat military action in Syria. So there's no more flight to quality, or no more flight to safety at present. A few charts I'll be trading this week. FANG, Phoenix New Media. We traded this week. We were looking at this pullback to the 10 EMA, and we see this test here. I posted Duncan brands this chart on StockTwits. Note the ascending triangle. RSI is bolting above 70, and we have some substantial volume here with a pocket pivot that we put in on Friday. Note the ratings with IBD. I overlaid that on the stock, embedded it rather. Let's take a look at the weekly. We note that we're continuing to hold the 10-period EMA, which is what the funds or the institutions like to buy off of. Pullbacks to the 10 EMA, you can see every time we came down and touched that, we moved higher, came down, touched, moved higher, and so forth. So now we're back above the 10-period, and I know a lot of people trade this stock, so I don't think it's on a lot of people's radar. With RSI continuing to move towards 70, I think this may continue to move higher. I believe Mikey said that he has this in his IRA. Note the strength today, relative strength to the S&P 500. Questcore is also a stock that I'm watching. I noted that we pulled back to the 10-period EMA. On this weekly chart, note the Kirby levels here, that we're above those levels. Watch if we hold this. If we continue to move higher off of this test last week, this could get pretty interesting. Questcore's earnings and IBD are very stellar. I believe it was 60% increase in earnings, and sales continue to move higher. Let me check the numbers here. You can see the earnings percent change over the last quarter was 96%. The 3-year growth rate at 121%. So this stock is looking really good. You can pause this later and check out these numbers, but sales percent change was 64%, 3-year growth rate at 98%. You want to see that in stocks that you're deciding to trade, especially if you're swing trading these or position trading them. Note the ratings here, and also the group leaders. Jazz, which is one we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, which is looking pretty good. And a sideways pattern. So let's take a look at Jazz. But before we do that, note that Questcore is on a 10 EMA pullback and a test on the weekly. The daily is down below the 10 and the 30, so keep an eye on that, as well as the RSI drifting down below 50. So keep that in mind. NQ is another stock that got a lot of attention over the last 24 hours. People searching it on Investors Business Daily. Note this flag breakout and moving higher on the weekly. Still looks strong. I wouldn't buy it here. I'd wait for a pullback to the 10-period EMA like we saw here. What a great opportunity that was. Came right down to the rising 10-period EMA, tested it, and bolted higher. You could have got this stock at 1536 and been selling it, or at least taking some partial profits here at 22. The weekly on Jazz, we're moving sideways, and the 10-period continues to move higher. Note the RSI is really strong, showing the momentum on the stock and the interest. On balance volume continues to move higher, and the relative strength of the S&P 500 is still moving higher. Taking a look at the daily. Note that we have a nice flag here off the 10-period. This could get interesting coming into the week. So I'll be watching. These are the stocks that are on my focus list, okay? So I hope this helps. We'll talk to you in the room on Monday. And again, this is Cousin Vinny coming to you from Day Trader Bootcamp and theclosingprint.com. I'll be posting my watch list here later tonight in this section right here. You can also check the stocks that we traded last week. Some of these we're still holding. So I hope this helps. Take care, and we'll talk to you later.